Hello, I'm Shelagh Fogarty and you can find me on LBC. The good people at Global have asked me to look over some of the programmes that we've done and some of the conversations that I've had with listeners throughout 2023 and maybe gogglebox the hell out of it.
It's just a long time since I've interviewed such a bad-tempered man.
I'm not bad-tempered at all.
Lord above, narky knickers.
Well, we stood in the polling booth together and we voted together. I always assumed she voted Labour.
I'm sorry. You began by saying you're not anti-royalist, anti-monarchist. Are you sure? I mean, it's perfectly okay to be, but you sound like you are. And I don't need to defend people who've gone down to the Mall on a big national occasion to enjoy it and soak up some atmosphere. Good luck to them. I don't need to defend them. What harm are they doing to anybody?
Sheila, that's what you're getting paid for. You're literally getting paid today to talk positively about these people. And yes, it's your opinion. You're still getting paid for it.
Tom,
you're not getting paid today.
I am getting paid today, and I'm getting paid tomorrow.
Exactly.
And tomorrow,
so in my
Lord
job,
above, narky knickers.
Well, if you want to respond to me with personal insults,
well, it
clearly shows that you're not very good at it.
Well, let me just stop that for a second. That chap there he's a classic of its type. There are callers who, you absolutely challenge me left, right and centre. But it's funny, there is a type, and it's often men, not exclusively, but it is often men, where when you begin to rise to the challenge and respond to the challenge, they act as though you've set fire to their hair. And it's like, what do you just listen to me, young lady? I'm not going to take any challenge back from you. And I think, well, you're ringing the wrong programme then. And he was a perfect example of that. So shall we carry on?
I'm now 43 this year, and I'm actually going to be selling my house and moving back in with my parents. So it's quite a difficult decision, really. But it's due to the cost of living. I'm finding that I was just working all hours and being quite stressed out from work and actually not having the time to even enjoy living in my home. My mum and dad are on a variable rate mortgage, so theirs has been going up. And this morning when I heard it had gone up again, my instant thought was about their affordability. So actually for both of myself and my parents, the best idea for us is if
I'll stop that there. This is an example of so many, I say young people, some of these people are in their 30s, even into their 40s, where maybe they've experienced a divorce or the rent has just become so high that they can't service their own rent anymore, and are moving in either with friends or, as was the case with this lady, moving back in with her parents. And that is a really, really common thing that we're seeing more and more of. And I don't just mean, 22, 23-year-olds who've just left college and haven't quite got their lives together yet, their working lives together yet. We're talking about people who are choosing to go back to their parents because they cannot afford their own lives, and that's really, really common. That's a common call that we get when we talk about the cost of living and especially housing.
I move in with them and we all pay a mortgage together, I don't have to work all hours and try and look after a house at the same time without getting any time for myself.
So it takes a bit of pressure off both of you, all of you. And remind me, your own home, do you own it or were you renting it, did you say?
Own it, yeah.
You own it. So you'll sell that, will you?
Yes, and the thought of not having a mortgage and being able to get one again is quite scary. But at the same time, I've only got one life and, we need to live it. And I just feel like I'm not living, I'm just surviving.
You've got to be fair to the individual against whom the allegation has been made, because it is not unknown for false or exaggerated allegations to be made against police officers. So you have to balance the evidence. And there is a crucial question.
So you wouldn't be in favour, would you, of automatic
There is a
suspension?
Crucial question. There is a crucial question to be asked, which is there a safe alternative duty for this officer to perform? Those are the regulations. Those are the steps you go through.
Right, so you wouldn't be in favour of automatic suspension if somebody's accused of sexual misconduct or domestic violence in the force?
I think that would amount to a fundamental denial of natural rights.
Well, teachers are suspended if they're accused of harming a child.
I think you've asked me my opinion. I've just given it.
So you didn't quite say no, so it's a no, is it?
I said it would be a fundamental denial of natural rights. That's my answer.
And if a teacher is accused of sexual abuse of a child, they should stay in school?
You have to talk to education specialists about that. And that's a different matter from the one that you've just raised with me.
This was an interesting one. This was a former, I think I'm right in saying this was a former Metropolitan Police officer who, well, you can hear what I was asking him. The trust in the Met has become so low, particularly from women. And then what emerged in the Casey report in March of 2023 and some of the cases that came to court in 2023, which involved former Met officers, current Met officers, facing some really, really serious allegations. And the question that hour, but obviously it was with this particular man, he was a guest on the programme, not a caller, he just wouldn't answer that question. Although, again, often when somebody won't answer a question, they kind of do by not answering it, and that was certainly the case here. Yeah, that got a big response, that call, I remember, or that guest, I remember.
Giving you a perfectly clear answer. You don't have to accept it, but there it is.
I accept it. I'm just challenging it a little bit. So you don't seem, given what we just heard about the Met, you don't seem to think that an allegation against a male officer is serious enough. Just an allegation of misconduct made by another colleague.
You can manufacture something out of the words I've used. You've heard
I'm not. I'm genuinely not. You're very suspicious of me. I'm genuinely not.
You can keep restating it in another way. I actually prefer the version of the answer that I gave to you, and there it stands.
It's just a long time since I've interviewed such a bad-tempered man.
I'm not bad-tempered at all, but you've tried to interrupt me several times.
I'm trying to have a conversation with you.
You've tried to interrupt me several times, as you've just done again, and then you've actually tried to manufacture a form of words that are not the words I've used.
All right, well, let's...
I'm sorry you interpret challenge to your style of interviewing as bad-tempered. But maybe we've come to the end of the interview. That's up to you.
I think we had.
They're trying to conserve our values. They're trying to
What's
conserve
breaking
our
it up?
identity. And to me, it's like there is like a Marxist agenda at the moment which wants to destroy.
Me?
Well, I'm saying generally speaking, there seems to be like a kind of globalist Marxist agenda, and to some extent it is
globalist Marxist agenda.
Yeah, that like to destroy countries.
To do what?
Well, to destroy countries,
How?
to destroy religion. Well,
really?
there's mass migration is destroying basically like nation states. They want
It?
Yeah,
How
it's
is
like it's like well because
do you mean the colour of those nations, or what do you
no,
mean?
If you don't have border controls, then you don't have a nation state. A nation state without a border
but we do, and
is
we
a
always
nation state that doesn't exist.
Brendan, we do have control over our borders to a degree, and we're an island, so clearly people breach those borders for all kinds of reasons sometimes, and we deal with that. But we do have control, and we are a nation state.
Yeah, we're a nation state, but there's always this like constant pressure, like to have. It seems to me like mass migration, and also the destruction of religion. The abolition of religion. This is like
It's interesting. To destroy the nation state nonsense. This was the kind of stuff that was peddled during Brexit as well. That somehow, because we were a member of the EU, our statehood, our nationhood, was evaporating away. And yet, when you travel in Europe, and I've lived in continental Europe as well in the past. Italy, Spain, Portugal, France, these are places that have, and further east to that as well, these are places that have incredibly defined and strong cultural backdrops and traditions. And, traditions always change, countries always change, but so do we. We have that. It's not being diluted by immigration. It's being changed by a number of things. Immigration, just time passing, different attitudes. If anything has the idea that immigrants have killed off religion in this country is genuinely laughable, because the secularization of Western societies has been happening for decades, and the people who now are more actively religious in this country just alone, tend to be immigrants from all different parts of the world. Ask any Catholic priest how many foreign Catholics are in his pews, and it's going to be a lot. So quite the opposite is true, I'm afraid.
I'm afraid my heart does not bleed for these buy-to-let landlords at all. The whole reason why property has gone bananas in this country, and my daughter can't afford to buy a property herself, is that these buy-to-let landlords have bought up all the properties, creating an overheated market. They're using property as a business, not somewhere to live. So what they've got to accept when times aren't good is that their business might lose money. Now, excuse me, if those properties go back onto the market, which I hope they all do, prices will drop, and then people like my daughter and my son will be able to afford a property instead of having to pay outrageous rents.
You say the whole reason that the property market is in the state it is because of buy-to-let. Is that not an exaggeration?
It is an exaggeration, yeah. There aren't enough houses built either, and there isn't enough social housing. So, yes, you're right. But
I think this chap was largely right, actually. I think whenever we talk about housing, and we do a lot because I happen to think it's going to come right up the ranks before the general election as one of the biggest issues that people are voting on. I think he was right. I think the way the buy-to-let sector has become or in part become what the social housing sector could be and should be, is a big part of the problems that we have. But he was leaving out a few other policy gaps as well, I think.
She made a fool of me for all of our married life, really.
Go on.
Because I've always been compassionate and caring about people, and I thought she was the same, and it transpired after a big row we had over refugees and Rwanda and stuff that she said she's always voted Conservative. And it's disgusting, really, isn't it?
Well, no, it's not disgusting to vote Conservative.
Come on.
Well, hang on. No, David, it isn't. It isn't. No,
well, it is really, isn't it?
Well, not always. No, not always. Because is it a specific element of Conservative policy currently that she was favouring that made things difficult, or was it just generally?
Well, if you look what's happened since 2010, all through austerity, which killed hundreds of thousands of people.
I remember this guy vividly. He was genuinely, viscerally distressed to discover that his partner had voted Conservative. I mean, I'm sure he's not the only one who's found out how a partner has voted, whichever way that was, and been really shocked. But it was a bit of a deal breaker for him, I think, if I remember correctly.
And then everything that's happened in between, and all this time when I thought she was like me, who cares about people, then she doesn't really care about anybody but herself, maybe. And it was like it was disgusting. It's disgusting. Isn't
and
it?
Had she told you she was voting what? Do you vote Labour?
I've always voted Labour, yeah.
And did she tell you she voted Labour?
She never actually come right out and said, but we'd stood in the polling booth together and we voted together. I always assumed she voted Labour.
I'm sorry.
I shouldn't have laughed. The poor man was in real distress, but the idea that... I mean, I would happily tell people how I'd voted, but in family, I mean. But he was genuinely upset, wasn't he? I shouldn't have laughed at the poor man. Really hope you enjoyed that. I actually enjoyed listening back, and because you do it every day and it's just, on you go and do the next one. So it was interesting just to reflect there on some of those calls. So I hope you enjoyed it too. And if you want to see more highlights from the programme, you can find them on YouTube and on Global Player as well. It's been a great year. Thank you for joining me during it. And I look forward to seeing you, maybe hearing from you in 2024. Have a good Christmas and a Happy New Year.